Gregory Campbell.
Deputy Speaker. The Downey case unfortunately brings into sharp focus some of the problems that we have as a society in dealing with the past. And as I said in an intervention earlier, unfortunately, as a result of the Downey case, we are now in the position of having some knowledge that if it hadn't materialised, we would have still been oblivious to the pernicious influence that the administration scheme brings to bear in Northern Ireland. Now, the issue has been, since the Downey case, those of us that have not been in possession of the knowledge of the scheme have been criticised on the one hand by Sinn Féin, and they have said that had we been informed in the run-up to any agreement on the scheme, we would have opposed it, and therefore that was part of the reason for us being kept in the dark. And then after that was seen to be somewhat obtuse and ludicrous, the same people in Sinn Féin then said that we knew about it all the time. And they then tried to quote various judgments that there may have been some reference in passing to a scheme that requires to be carried out, but there never was any reference in the public domain, and as my right honourable friend, the member for North Belfast, alluded to, anything that was put in the public domain, either in the House or outside, precluded a scheme of this nature. In fact, the right honourable member for Neath, the former Secretary of State, made it absolutely clear there was no scheme. Full stop. Period. No scheme.
I wonder.
Yes, I will give it.
Gentleman. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm most grateful to the honourable member for allowing me to intervene. Could I just draw his attention to the characteristic features that were actually mentioned by the Right Honourable Member for Neath? And again, I'm very sorry that he isn't here this afternoon, and I've explained why. I understand he can't be here. That in fact, in the Downey judgment, which of course is now in the public domain, in written testimony submitted by the Right Honourable Member for Neath, he actually described the procedure, and I'm quoting here, the procedure was in a number of ways wholly unprecedented. Another characteristic was that the scheme progressed in a non-public manner. Quoting, confidentiality was maintained for the individuals who submitted their names to the scheme. Neither the names of the applicants nor the outcome of the applications were subjected to publicity. End of quote. That's actually in the public domain. So for Sinn Féin now to claim that we all knew about it and we all have had some sort of amnesia about it is absolutely untrue and very insulting.
I thank the member for North Down for that very enlightening quote. And of course, it simply proves the case that what unites people right across Northern Ireland, with the exception of those who used to advocate violence and excuse and defend it, is that we are all rightly appalled at the secret nature of this scheme. There have been others who have referred to, and it has been alluded to in the policing board in Northern Ireland, that in some way members of the policing board were briefed. And of course, again, when you examine the record, no one was ever briefed in relation to an administrative scheme such as this. Of course, everyone knew that there was an outstanding issue of on the runs. Everyone knew that. There were those who said this matter must be resolved, and there were those of us who were determined to say, if it comes before Parliament, if there is any possibility of us having any input into a resolution that means people will be made immune from what they have carried out in the past, we will resolutely oppose it. That much is absolutely clear. Others have said that the Eames-Bradley report, and one of the authors of that, Mr Bradley himself, has indicated that people knew about the scheme as well. And when you examine any reference to this, it is absolutely clear that no one was informed publicly. Whoever was being informed privately, there was no public reference to a scheme of this nature whatsoever. I want to turn now to the issue that a number of members have alluded to. Yes, I do.
I'd like to thank my friend Given Way. Perhaps it would be interesting to find out when Mr Bradley himself knew and who actually told him.
Yes, indeed, and I understand that a reference that Mr Bradley, the former Vice Chairman of the Policing Board, alluded to the issue being brought before the Policing Board. He had actually left the Policing Board at that stage. But I want to go on to this issue of the matter of the intent of the process. And here we come, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the very kernel of the issue. What was the intent of the letters, the various range of letters? What was the intent by each of the administration that initiated this scheme and this administration who continued it? That was on the part of those who were sending the letters. And then what was the perception and understanding of those who were the recipients of the letters? This is the key to the entire matter. It is absolutely abundantly clear to everyone that the intent of the letters was to reassure people who may have believed, and we all understand the reason for them believing, that there were circumstances under which if they either came back to Northern Ireland or were approached by an officer of the law in whatever jurisdiction they happened to be, that they could at some point in the future be made amenable for crimes of which they were suspected of being involved in. It is clear that that is what they believed the letter made them immune from, so that they would in some way be protected or sheltered from investigation into actions that they had been associated with in the past. And for that very reason, Sinn Féin were quite happy to be the messengers of the tidings that would have been brought to the recipients of the letter. So when this issue broke in terms of the Downey case, Madam Deputy Speaker, there's some reference has been made. I know the Honourable Member for East Belfast, who's had to leave, indicated that this made disillusionment within some sections of the Unionist community more apparent. My argument would be much more significantly different to that, Madam Deputy Speaker. All that the Downey case did was to crystallise some of the disillusionment that has been apparent for a number of years in sections of the Unionist community. And unfortunately, we now have to try and repair the damage that the Downey case judgment has done, along with a series of other issues. And unfortunately, the Downey judgment simply brought it into the public focus. The underlying principle, Madam Deputy Speaker, here is that terror and those who supported it in the past have used the potential of a return to violence as a bargaining chip. That's right. And not for the first time, because there are many of us who argued that during the negotiations up to the Belfast Agreement, during the negotiations afterwards, during the negotiations undoubtedly in reference to this administrative scheme, there was always the spectre, the prospect, that if this wasn't agreed to, unfortunately violence could return. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, our view is very, very clear, and it is that you cannot be held to ransom by people who make that as some form of threat or insinuation that bad times could return. And in any case, in the course, yes, I'll give way.
Very grateful to the honourable gentleman, because he makes a very important point. And just to further back up his point, does he recall, like I do, that at the time when negotiations were happening about the devolution of police and justice powers to Northern Ireland, when there still needed to be some areas cleared up and properly debated, there were some, including some in this House who held ministerial office then, who told us, oh, if you don't devolve police and justice, it'll create violence on the streets, and people are saying to us that dissidents will grow in strength. Even with the devolution of police and justice, we have problems with dissident terrorists. So this argument is a bogus argument.
I thank my right honourable friend for that. Another instance of this threat being used, and it will continue to be used. Right. And in fact, we have heard just earlier this week a prominent member of Sinn Féin talking about there could be a crisis in the making. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have had uninterrupted devolved government, with all the difficulties that there have been in the past 7 years. There hasn't been a crisis, there hasn't been a revolving door. There may be one physically in Stormont as you go in, but there hasn't been a revolving door of an up-down devolution in the course of the past 7 years. We have survived many of these mini crises and invented problems. Some of them invented, some real. So let us be very focused about what will happen now and in the very near future. I have no difficulty whatever in saying that the devolved process that is currently in place in Northern Ireland is sufficiently robust to withstand any prosecution of any member of Sinn Féin, however senior they may be, if it can be shown and demonstrated that they have been guilty of involvement in terrorist acts in the past. In fact, if it can be shown, and I am currently in the process of trying to establish that that may well indeed be the case, and if it is the case, it would be an act of cowardice, of political expediency, if anyone were to say we cannot proceed with that case because of the possible jeopardy that it may bring to the political process in Northern Ireland. As I say, we have had 7 years of uninterrupted devolution. Hopefully we will continue to have that. It is sufficiently robust now, and I have been part of it for those 7 years, and I'm content that we must work to improve that process, but we must not allow it to be held to ransom by those who want to make progress in terms of gaining further concessions to the throwback period that many of them were involved in violence in the past, and they want to try and expunge their involvement in the past from the record. That must not and cannot be allowed to happen. Thankfully, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have had the opportunity today that has been denied us in the past in terms of this administrative scheme. There is now the light of truth being brought to bear to this scheme, unfortunately belatedly, because had it been brought to bear at the time of this scheme's initiation, perhaps the reality and the outcome would have been very different.